story is everything about how we and all of you are trying to do what is in everyone's interest, restore the middle class here in this country. The middle class is the single most defining feature of the United States of America. It's the most fundamental difference we have in terms of the backbone and strength of our economy, and it has been for a long, long time. But it's in a distressed condition now. And it's in the interest of the very wealthy and the very poor that the middle class does very well, because it is the engine. Without the middle class doing well, there's no products to buy, the wealthy don't have much to sell, their net worth gets undermined, as well as the poor don't have a ladder up. And so that's what this story is all about, and I'm not being facetious. I know I'm characterized in the press as, middle-class Joe, and like that's supposed to be something that is, I'm not sophisticated. I'm proud of the fact that I'm always characterized that way. But for this reason, the middle class is a hell of a lot more sophisticated than everybody gives them credit for, beyond that. And so, folks, look, it's about Americans being able to have a decent job that allows them to live in a decent home in a safe neighborhood, send their kid to a school that they're proud to have their child in, a school that gives their kid a fighting chance to be able to go to college and gives them a fighting chance to be able to send their child to college, and to maybe able to put away a little bit of money so when it comes time for them retired, they don't have to turn and rely on their kids. I mean, that's my simple definition of middle class. That's the kind of neighborhood, and all kidding aside, both workers and bankers grew up in, the vast majority of us. That's it. And that's the backbone of the country. But for the first time in a long time, the middle class has taken a beating that's been progressively worse for them. You saw the statistics. Middle class folks are making about what they made in 1976. It's been fairly stagnant for a long time. It's not the fault of this administration, the last administration. It's just been a cumulative effect. And we got to turn it around. And right now, although we have, we've gotten ourselves out of a very deep hole and we're kind of on level ground, the engine isn't revving, man. There's still people out there. There's a lot of people who went to bed in both your districts last night staring at the ceiling, wondering whether or not the next day they're going to have a job. A lot of people going to bed at night staring at the ceiling and wondering, literally lying awake, wondering whether they're going to be able to stay in this house a month from now or 2 months from now. Dennis has heard me say before, the longest walk a parent can make is the one my dad made, and a lot of people in the Buckeye State have made too. It's walk up a short flight of stairs to their kid's bedroom and say, honey, I'm sorry, but you're not going to be able to go to St. Matthew's next year, you can't go to Cooper School, or you won't be able to be in the choir, or you can't play in that Little League team. Daddy lost his job, Mommy lost her job, or I don't have the money to pay the bank for the house, honey. My dad made that walk when I was going to the 4th grade. I remember it vividly. It didn't seem like the end of the world at the time. We were staying at my grandpa's house in Scranton, Pennsylvania. He walked up the stairs, sat at the end of the bed and said, Joey, Dad's going to have to move. And the first thought was, my God, what's the matter? He said, I'm going to have to leave. He said, I come home every week. I'm going down to Wilmington. That's where Uncle Frank is. There's jobs down there. And it was a tough walk for him to make. But then it wasn't until I got to be 25, 30 years old, I realized the tougher walk was to walk into his father-in-law's kitchen, Ambrose Finnegan, into the pantry and say, Ambrose, I need a favor. Can you keep Gene and the kids? I promise I'll make it up to you. I promise it'll be okay. My dad, like all of you, is a proud man. Proud man. He used to say a job is about a lot more than a paycheck. It's about your dignity. It's about your self-respect. It's about your place in the community. It's about being able to turn and look your kid in the eye and say, honey, everything's going to be okay. That's what a job's about. And so we got to get to work. And one of the ways to do that is strengthening small business in America. Strengthening small business in America to restore a sense of possibilities for the middle class. The magic of this country has been that if you had a good idea, a plan, you demonstrated you had good character and you could manage things, you could always find a local banker who would probably help you, be able to help you. If that banker wasn't quite sure, some of you had a home. You could go and borrow against your home. and you could borrow the money to get the seed money, and then you go back to the bank and say, I got it started, and now maybe can you jump in? And the bank having to make the fiduciary responsibility of their stockholders and their depositors would say, okay, I'll balance it out. You're in, it looks like it's going. Folks, that's how it used to work. Folks, these are the people, small businessmen and women, who are the engine of economic growth in America, and for the past 75 years created 2 out of every 3 jobs that get created in America. And some of them are startup businesses, have very storied histories. Microsoft, Google, FedEx, Intel, AOL, all started the way I stated. Several, by the way, with SBA loans, of the ones I mentioned. But for most, the story is about the middle class. The bakery in a small town you used to go to after Mass to get those cinnamon rolls with your mom and dad. Or the local boutique where you bought your daughter her first prom gown. Or the service station up the street where you could take your car and get your carburetor fixed or your brakes fixed, and you knew you weren't getting ripped off, but it was there. I could go on and on and on for the thousands of small businesses that made up the parts of our lives that weren't the storied business, that weren't as big as even this business. And you and I both know that bakery, that boutique, that service station, they're having real trouble these days. A lot of them aren't open anymore, and very few are able to start up right now. On September 15, 2008, the shades got pulled. That's when Lehman went down. The shades got pulled on business, not just small business, but big business. But small businesses got crushed. When the President and I were sworn in January 20th, 2009, with several million people on the wall looking at us with hope and expectation, we were hemorrhaging jobs. We were losing jobs of 700,000 to 800,000 a month. 700,000 to 800,000 a month. That month, between January 1 and the time I raised my hand on the 20th, we had already lost 720,000 jobs in those 20 days. And as the bankers will tell you, and I come from the state of banking, I've always had a great relationship with banking. My state of Delaware, a lot of these guys are incorporated and have major businesses there. They're great providers of jobs. They were also on the verge of collapsing. We weren't talking about restructuring, y'all. We were talking about how many of you were going to shutter your doors. Shutter your doors. And if that had happened, we would have triggered an international, not recession, but depression. Credit for big and small not only slowed, it was for a while frozen. As I said, we were hemorrhaging jobs. And the big guys couldn't expand either. The little guys, even those who were performing, that is, paying their loans for you non-business people, for the people maybe watching, the performing loans, they all of a sudden had their total loan called. It wasn't because the banks were bad guys. It was a simple proposition. They were able to borrow the money to have the loan if they were paying because their building they were in was worth $100,000. All of a sudden, that bakery building was worth $58,000. Their liabilities exceeded their assets. And all of a sudden, they became a non-performing loan. I don't know how many people called me. Literally, how many people I knew. I grew up, I commuted for 36 years in the state of Delaware. 7,900 trips, 250 miles a day going back and forth. So I was home all the time. I don't know how many people literally would come to the train station to try to grab me. And during the campaign, the times I was home, say, I did everything right, I'm paying. It's all working. I mean, I haven't, but they call my loan. Or they've eliminated my line of credit. You know, the way that boutique keeps dresses on the shelf is they borrow the money to go buy the dresses. They sell the dresses, then they pay the money back. The vending machine that gets filled out here, it gets filled because the guy who fills it borrows the money to buy the crackers and the peanuts and the candy to go in it. And he's a line of credit. Lines of credit were pulled for a lot of people. And so the point is, we did an unpopular but absolutely necessary thing. The American people rescued the banks. And some wags would say we saved them from themselves. I know you guys wouldn't think of it that way, but that's kind of how we occasionally think of it. Because we needed to loosen credit. Got to get capital flowing. But if you, after that, if you're big enough, you're a GE or Home Depot or the DuPont company in my home state, once the system was stabilized, they were able to go out and solidify their position. They were able to go out and have the money to expand. And right now, they have close to, those major business America have close to $2 trillion sitting there. And that's good, not bad. That's a good thing. But guess what? They're not spending it. They're not expanding. They don't even need to borrow from these guys now. But they're not expanding. Why? They don't have customers. They don't have customers to buy the widgets they make. They don't have customers to buy the product they make. Why? Because unemployment is skyrocketed. And the mood is uneasy. Ask these guys. I deal with their CEOs all the time, and some of them. They look across the pond. We're doing fairly well. We, America, if in fact Greece was not looking like it may go under, if in fact the Eurozone didn't look like it was going to seize up, 40% of all our trade is with Europe. All of a sudden, one of the major banks, which these guys lent money to and they borrowed money from, one of the major banks in Europe goes under. Whoa. So these guys are sitting there looking, whoa, what's happened? I'm doing it right, but what's happening now?